You're tired, you're cynical, you're unmotivated. So have you lost your passion? Or maybe you feel guilty for just not doing enough, knowing that you're capable of so much more. You might even feel trapped in your own success. You've made it, so you're wondering, like, why am I still so miserable? And as a therapist and ADHD career coach, I see this every day. It's the difference between bore out and burnout. You have to ask yourself, are you grinding or are you drifting? Because if you're grinding, you're in burnout and you need to reduce that friction. But if you're drifting, you're in bore out and you actually need more of a challenge. If you misdiagnose this, the cure for one can become the poison for the other. Today, we're going to diagnose which one is stalling out your career. I'll show you exactly how to distinguish between burnout and bore out. Second, we'll look at the root cause, how to address the issues of your brain, and we'll face the hard truth. Sometimes you aren't broken, you're just in the wrong car. By the end of this video, you will have a 3-part recovery roadmap. Whether you need a decreased friction of burnout through systems and structures, or re-engage your gears for bore out through novelty and challenge. But first, definitions. The World Health Organization defines burnout as a syndrome, which is a grouping of symptoms resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. It manifests in 3 main areas: exhaustion, which can be physical, mental, or emotional. There's this negativity, such as feeling cynical or detached. Though burnout was thought to be exclusively a work issue, many are starting to recognize it in other facets of life, such as caregiver burnout, compassion fatigue, ADHD burnout. On the flip side, we have bore out. And even though it's not recognized by the WHO yet, there still is psychological research beyond this. And they define it as a state of chronic underload, characterized by 3 distinct crises. Boredom. There's this crisis of meaning where we're just disinterested and just don't care. And then there's this crisis of growth where you feel overqualified but stuck. You just don't see a way forward. But this is where it gets dangerous because bore out looks so much like burnout. I'm going to pull up my computer so that we can actually go through this list together where we're comparing burnout versus bore out. Our first area is our physical feeling. For burnout, you're going to see this tight chest, this clenched jaw, this classic stress response. Oftentimes we get this wired but tired. Where on this bore out side, right, we're seeing the other side of the spectrum. The heavy limbs, drowsiness, this fog of feeling underwater. Now both have exhaustion. We'll be looking at why that exhaustion is occurring later on. For the psychological, cognitive, emotional area, for burnout is this dread. I can't keep up. I don't want to go in. Absolutely overwhelmed with your situation that you can never catch up. There's more work than I can actually handle. Where on the other side of this spectrum, again, from dread, we have apathy, right? None of this matters. Now, there still might be that dread, like, I don't want to go do this. I don't want to go someplace that doesn't matter. But it's more because of that indifference, that feeling just like a cog and that none of this matters. The behavior, right? How are we actually responding and what are we doing within these categories? For burnout, first, a lot of scatter, right? Like we're starting multiple projects. We're not really getting anywhere. It kind of feels manic. Energy that often isn't pleasant because we're just kind of in this panic mode. It's hard to get any real work. It's hard to be creative, it's hard to get thoughtful, and so we're just putting out fires and it's just this constant stream, if not a fire hose of chaos. But again, the opposite is we have this drift. We're just scrolling or staring, avoidance, where we're trying to get out of the work as much as we can. We're really paralyzed by these simple tasks, especially if it feels so monotonous and below your capacity level that something that would be easy is absolutely awful to do. If you're watching someone with burnout or bore out, we're going to look at these observational signs. For burnout is this snap, that hair trigger where you're wanting to walk on eggshells around them. There's that franticness, often doing just sloppy mistakes because they're just not fully present. For the bore out, as we see this withdrawal, they're checked out, pure unmotivated, and this very low energy voice and tone and posture, right? They just look like they don't want to be here at all. Even though there's many overlapping areas, it's the cause and the solution that are so different. The cause of burnout is friction. the brakes are locked and there's too much grind. So you don't need to reduce stress, you need to release the brake. Whereas bore out, this is the understimulation. Not enough friction, actually. It's not about releasing the gas necessarily. It's you still have to work, you still have to show up, you still have to do your stuff. But this is about engaging with the work, right? You need a challenge, you need novelty. It needs to matter. Before we go under the hood, I need to know which side of those checklists hit you harder. Are you currently grinding against a brake, or are you redlining in neutral? Drop a comment with brake or neutral right now. It helps me understand who I'm talking with today. So our second section is where we're now diving into the root cause. We're looking underneath the hood to understand why this is happening. Most people view stress as the culprit. Too much is bad, too little is great. But for the ADHD brain, it's about mechanics. I use a specific formula to explain why passionate professionals stall out. Here's my burnout formula. It's stress plus frustration over time results in burnout. Think of burnout as driving with your foot pinned on the gas and the brake at the same time. The gas is the stress. It's the high-stake deadlines, the helping nature of your job, the drive to succeed. The brake is the frustration. When you're ineffective or unproductive, think of executive dysfunction, poor boundaries, or lack of structure. And take my client Alex. He was this high-level creative director, and he loved the gas of big launches and tight deadlines. But as he was melting down, why? Because he was fighting the brake of disorganized team and a chaotic inbox. He was revving at 8,000 RPMs just to find a file. And we didn't tell him to work less or quit his job. We released the brake by building an executive function scaffold that handled the logistics for him. Suddenly, the heat dropped, but the speed stayed. Stress alone is not going to kill the engine. A car can be cruising at 80 miles an hour with zero grind. But when you add friction of frustration and you're spinning your wheels just to stay still, eventually it melts your engine. And this is why vacations don't work. You aren't fixing the brake. You're just turning the car off for a week and then starting it back up with the brake still engaged. To fix burnout, we don't necessarily start by reducing the stress, especially if you love the high stakes nature of your work. Instead, we decrease the friction. Here are these 3 tips to stop the grind. First, you need to upgrade your executive function scaffolding. Stop trying to remember or willpower your way through the day. That is a high friction living. You need to externalize your executive function. This means implementing not just another to-do list, but an automated reminder, body doubling, or specialized software. The system does all the heavy lifting, and then that friction starts to drop. Tip 2 is this radical boundary setting, and this is this hard coding method. Most professionals try to just be better at saying no. But for the ADHDer, that's way too much friction. You need a hard code on your boundaries. So you need to use your calendar to lock in your time. Use auto replies to manage your expectations and create these if-then protocols from your clients or colleagues. You want to move from trying to set boundaries to operating within a system that protects your energy for you. The final tip around burnout is to reduce these micro frictions, especially around your environment. And we often ignore the small things that add the brake and pressure. Right? Is your office too loud or too quiet? Is the lighting terrible? Are you constantly interrupted? These micro frictions that deplete your dopamine before you even start your real work. So audit your environment. If you can remove 5 small irritants, you just release 20% of the pressure on the brake pedal. Bore out is the gas but disengaged from a gear. Your foot is still on the gas, right? You still have to work to get done, and you have obligations and responsibilities. And you might even still have the ambition, the drive and the capacity, but you're just disengaged. You aren't in any gear. And your dopamine system is starved. The ADHD brain is biologically wired for novelty and complexity. And when you're in a role that is repetitive or easy or it lacks meaning, your gears just don't catch. You're revving the engine, but there's no forward motion. And this leads to that specific sluggishness, exhaustion. It's not that you're tired from working, it's that you're tired from trying to even care about things that don't stimulate your brain or your prefrontal cortex. And this is that ADHD trap. The reason we get stuck is that we often try to escape burnout by seeking bore out. We think, I'll just take a low stress, simple job. But for an ADHD high achiever, simple is often more exhausting than complex. You haven't solved the problem. You've just traded the gas and the brake problem for a neutral gear problem. You've traded one mechanical failure for another. So there's Sarah, and she left this high pressure law firm because she was burned out. She took a simple administrative role, thinking that it would be restful. But 6 months later, she was more exhausted than ever. She wasn't tired, she was stalled. So we shifted her into a role that required a deep strategic problem solving. And her exhaustion vanished overnight because her gears finally caught. She was excited for what she wanted to do. So here are these 3 tips around how to re-engage and get back into gear. Tip 1, which is reconnect with your purpose. Bore out is often a crisis of meaning. And if you become just another cog in the machine, your brain has no reason to catch the gear. You need to reconnect with your why. For a therapist or an executive, this means looking at the specific impact of your work that actually moves you. If you can't find it in your current tasks, you're going to need to job craft, which is negotiating to spend more time on projects that align with your core or working with clients that light you up. And when the work matters, the gear engages. Tip 2 is complexity injection. And this is where you need to stretch yourself. The ADHD brain thrives in this optimal challenge. And if your job has become too easy, then you are biologically prone to lethargy. You need to stretch yourself by taking on new initiative or learning complex skills that feels maybe slightly too hard. This forces your prefrontal cortex to come back online. So don't wait for your boss to give you this challenge. You need to find this high complexity project that requires hyperfocus. Tip 3 is gamify the mundane. And this is the sprint. And we all have, let's just face it, BS tasks. And this is that administrative drudgery that feels just like mental torture. Instead of dragging them out, acknowledge that, this is just the crap that you have to do and just blast through it. You can use a sprint method where you set a timer and make a competition with yourself. Or use a high stakes external motivator to gamify the process. The goal is to just clear the noise as fast as possible so that you can get back to that high novelty, interesting work that keeps your engine running. But here we now have a hard truth to face. You can implement all of the systems, put in all of the boundaries, and you can try to gamify your week. But if you release the brake and you've tried to shift the gears and you're still miserable, it may not be a mechanical failure as much as a mismatched environment. Sometimes the bravest thing that you can do and the best thing for your mental health is just to find a career that actually fits the way that your engine, your mind, and your wiring, your body, your soul was meant to run. As we end, I want you to think about burnout or bore out as what they are. They are symptoms. They're signs. They're basically saying, hey, something is not right. And when we know this, that's when we start to say we can actually do something about it. It's actually what I want you to leave with, is the hope and the courage to actually face your situation and to say, hey, what can I do about it? What's within my power? What's within my influence? How can I advocate for myself? But I also want you to know that you're not screwed, that you have options, that you have an incredible amount of talent and hustle and spirit, and that if you can aim that and if you can influence that towards one thing, towards making a difference in someone else's life, that's the power of a career that is meaningful. And so if you are interested in getting support with this, feel free to check out any of my hybrid life and career coaching programs, whether it's the Job Search Accelerator or our ADHD career planning process. We're here to really help you through this. And if this video is helpful, or if you have a friend or colleague, a loved one that you know is struggling with burnout or bore out, please share this.